I watched Charlie's memorial and it changed me and shamed me. If you didn't, watch it. The memorial is a study in courage, commitment, and Christ. I did not pay much attention to Charlie because I found him too siloed. He had doubts about October 7th, but was still a stalwart Israel supporter. He was not looking far enough over the horizon for me. He wasn't in the know like I was. He wasn't a veteran, much less a Spec Ops veteran. He wasn't an ex-spook or Fed. He didn't have cool guy creds. Now I realized Charlie was too busy focusing on the person in front of him to look over the horizon, to know them. While I was busy looking at the big picture, Charlie was looking at high schoolers, college freshmen, or the goth kid in front of him and giving them his full attention and respect. And of course, his microphone. So they had a voice. And while he spoke convincingly, eloquently, and intelligently to whomever was in front of him, he listened to their voices too. And then I listened to his widow, Erica, at the memorial. I listened as Erica bowled me over with her fierce faith and seething love while barely containing the ocean of grief welling up in her eyes, calling herself Charlie's vault. And then I watched in awe as she straightened her velvet steel spine, took a deep breath, and declared in front of millions what would never have occurred to me. She forgave her husband's killer and meant it. Because that's what Charlie would have done. Because that's what Yeshua required of him and her and all of us. And then it struck me like a lightning bolt. Charlie was murdered because he was a Christian, a Christ follower, for the exact same truth Yeshua was tortured and murdered for. Because the only way to silence him was to kill him. But even in killing him, they cannot stop him, nor Erica, ever. And I realized that a man half my age was a better man than me. He was a far better Christian than me, forgiving his enemies and then dialoguing with them. I saw that whom I had long ago given up on, Charlie had won over. With those I would have lost patience with and been furious with, he began discussions. He outspoke me, he outworked me, he outprayed me, he outloved me, he outled me. At half my age, he was twice the man. And I'm still here, and he's not. So, I swear to God and to you right here and right now, I will do better. I will do more. I will love and profess and emulate Yeshua more, as Charlie did. When I don't want to hear anymore, I will listen more. I will ask my wife weekly. Charlie did it every Saturday when he was away. How can I husband you better? I accept Erica's challenge to lead and love. I rescind my declaration of giving up on the younger generation. I will reach out again and again and again. I have always said I will never give up. That means never surrender. Civilians don't realize it, but as soldiers become more elite, they take more elite oaths. The American soldier's oath says, I will never quit. But the airborne soldier's creed includes, surrender is not in my creed. I am airborne, but I also served in special forces. Within the SF oath is this, I will never surrender, though I am the last. I've taken all those oaths, but each new supersedes the previous in requiring more. But Charlie, in following Yeshua unto death, has required me to alter and extend my declaration, not just to do more, but to be more. So yes, I'll never quit, nor will I surrender. I will never give up. But now, because of Charlie, I will never give up on anyone ever again. Rape born, orphan adopted, blessed bastard, ex-soldier, special agent, spy, tyrant targeted, slave state slandered, turned whistleblower warrior, sabotaged, sharpened, corruption crucibled, redemption repurposed, maker missioned, as chaplain, leader, teacher, and truth teller to power. Now, America's intelligence officer, forging with the last standing alone together on our tier trail to rescue the Republic and restore America's godliness. I'm Jeff Prather, and this is the Prather Point. And that is how Charlie has changed me. So that's what we're going to be discussing today, and also some of the subpoints. Trump's autism assuagement effort won't. Pastors are saying churches are filling in the wake of Charlie's death. We'll have special guests, Owen Anderson, Arizona State University's TPUSA advisor. He's also a philosophy professor, and author Ira CHALEFF later on ethical followership and accountable leadership, because it's very important to know who to follow and who not to, and to hold our leaders especially accountable now. But before I get to all that, Trump, during the eulogy, he started talking about his big announcement on autism, which I thought was totally inappropriate. I thought Erica was amazing. RFK almost broke down. Don Jr. was funny and also self-effacing. Tucker was touching. Trump was the worst of those speakers. But the autism announcement was a big disappointment in that they're saying, don't take Tylenol if you are pregnant. Of course, it's really the aluminum in Tylenol, and they let vaccines off the hook yet again. It is a step. It's a small step, but it's not enough. And I thought my friend Mike Adams really summed this up, just like we thought. This was all about Tylenol and not about vaccines. Look, squirrel. Disappointed but not surprised. At least Trump did go off script for a second and mention unvaccinated Amish not having autism, but that's not part of the official announcement. So it's a step. It's moving, but Big Pharma has captured him. We got to understand that. And I'll also quote my friend Dr. McCullough: the pathway to developmental regression begins with vaccines, not acetaminophen. But at least it was said. It is a start. It just shows how things are corrupted up there. But on a positive front, pastors are seeing that church attendance is exploding in the wake of Charlie's assassination. Churches are linking a recent increase in attendance to the September 10th assassination of Charlie Kirk, whose public embrace of Christianity was deep and profound thread throughout his message. That was his whole message, everything he said. And Tucker Carlson just had a great presentation about 5 days ago about that. Charlie was killed because he was a Christian. I even asked that question in my kids' martial arts class last night, and one of the kids, now he was a pastor's son, just said because he was a Christian. I'm like, you're exactly right. That's why he was killed. Because every person has value. Every person has a soul, and we are accountable to God because we are not God. So that's a step in the right direction. Just because you going to church doesn't mean that you are following Christ, but it is a step in the right direction. And I'm not going to get into a lot of this today. I've been doing a lot of that. I've had John Michael Cullen on. I'll have Zeb Boykin on. The Marine Scout Sniper is graciously coming on soon, but they're saying that the body, the Charlie Kirk's body miraculously absorbed the bullet. Of course, from what we know of the caliber, that is not possible. And they're saying this is a miracle, not a conspiracy. And I wrote on my X account, when they say it's a miracle, not a conspiracy, it's a conspiracy. And I also really resent them trying to use the status of Charlie in that way. Erica is wearing a St. Michael pendant that is stained with her blood. And I found her to be very fierce and formidable. And since then, I've looked at some of the joint casts they've done. And she, of course, is the new CEO of TPUSA. And I think she will now be unstoppable. I know some people have called out some of her past connections with Romanian child institutions. Doesn't look like anything bad there, but I'll tell you this, whatever connections were there before are gone now, and she will be unstoppable. In fact, I will say she could be POTUS in the next decade. Very impressive, but even more, even also relevant to young people turning to go to church, where hopefully they are turning to Christ. It's not necessarily the same thing by any means, but they are also turning out to register as Republicans in large numbers. So between the two uniparty evils, it's better, even though they are more despicable because they pretend to be for the Constitution and they pretend to be for Christ. But 30% of Christians are not registered to vote, and I suspect that is because you've got the lukewarm, politically correct pastors who would do, I'll do a mask service, I'll do an unmasked service, and I'll go along with whatever. And they're feigning that, well, I don't want to bring politics into the pulpit, when, of course, Yeshua was executed for political speech and for political action. So good things happening. You know, people are going to church. Young people are going to church. Young people are signing up as Republicans. And that 30% who are probably, I suspect, told by their pastors, they don't want to talk about politics. I had Pastor Arthur Pawlowski on, who was the brave Canadian pastor who prayed with the Canadian truckers. And that's why I think that Canadian trucker strike was so successful. And, when they tried to come into his church to shut him down, he said, "Get out, Nazis." They put him in jail. He kept yelling. And I said, "Well, Pastor, what about all these other pastors that are going along with this?" He goes, "They're fakes. They're fakes." And that's true in every profession. There's 95% of them are fakes, I think. But we also have to pay attention to both sides of issues. And of course, I've been very stringent upon Israel, but Hamas just executed 3 collaborators in public, shouting Allah Akbar, hours after the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia recognized the Palestinian state without preconditions. That's morally wrong as well. Just because Israel is wrong doesn't make Hamas right. Just because October 7th was allowed to happen doesn't mean that Hamas did not come in and slaughter Israeli civilians. So it's not a cowboy Indian movie, black hat, white hat. It's more complicated than that. Just like Pam Bondi coming out and saying, right after Charlie Kirk's assassination, right after saying there's speech and then there's hate speech. No, there's just speech, and the unsayable must be said always. And that is a major, major mistake to hear that. But that is turning continually against Israel as well, because there was a really extraordinary exchange at the 12th Beijing Xinjiang Forum, where it looked like an impromptu confrontation between Zhan Yuntong, the dean of the Institute of International Relations at Tsinghua University, which is their most prestigious university in China, and speaking to an Israeli military officer named Elad Shoshan. And when the Israeli officer tried to make an excuse for the Gaza genocide, he really called him out and said, "You killed more than 70,000 civilians. The fact is not decided by you. It's not decided by your government. Your government has no legitimacy to decide to defend that fact." Now, Communist Chinese killed like 75 million. So it's not that they are morally correct, but it is relevant that even China is calling out Israel at this point. And finally, Trump is talking about reclaiming Bagram Air Base. And I think I can speak for all my brother and sister veterans and saying that is the worst idea we've ever heard, because either you're going to take it by force, which means more blood, our blood, or you're going to buy it, which means we're going to give them even more money than before. So we shouldn't have left. And of course, we should have left right after ODA 595. There's the signed bottle by Sergeant Major Vince McKellar, one of the original horse soldiers. I've had him on the show a couple times. The Green Berets won the war in a couple weeks. We could have left. But then SEAL Team 6 wanted to get some. They wanted to steal John Chapman's Medal of Honor Valor. Then Big Army wanted to come in. Everybody's in. Then we go back into Iraq again. I get activated. And the way we left was terrible. Now all the Afghan vets feel like Vietnam vets. But to go back in there is to give them more money to use against us or to go in and fight for it. But of course, there's two things to an objective. Can you take the objective? Okay, is one. But the second is, can you hold the objective? And nobody can hold Afghanistan. The British couldn't do it. Alexander couldn't do it. If Alexander couldn't do it, who was beloved by all his men, nobody is going to hold Afghanistan. And therefore, we're not going to hold Bagram airfield. We thought we would learn this from the Russians when we back in, but it looks like it's coming around again. So this is another terrible suggestion by the Trump administration. And believe me, I take no joy in calling out the Trump administration, big Trump supporter originally, but I am going to call him out when he needs calling out. He's not Jesus. I'm not in the cult of Trump or the church of Trump. But I want to get to my guest now because obviously, as you can see, the tears streaming down my face. That's not just from my cataract surgery. I have been very moved by Charlie's assassination, by his widow, by his faith. And I'm going to have to step up and do better. Thought I was doing pretty good. Going to do better. But I wanted to talk to someone who is inside that organization. And Dr. Owen Anderson is a professor at Arizona State University and a pastor at Christ the King Reformed Church. He's written a recent book called Samson, a Biblical Hero, that takes us through the lessons from Samson's life and today's culture, I think because of the wimpy boys out today. He's still undergoing his own legal battle against being forced to go along with DEI. He's also a commentator on current events and can approach them from the unique angles of being both a tenured philosophy professor at a secular university and a Bible-believing pastor. And of course, he is the TPUSA advisor for the campus. And of course, that's the backyard of Charlie Kirk's headquarters. So I really want to get into it from his perspective of Charlie's assassination, and then also really what the students are feeling there. So, Owen, great to have you. Thank you so much for coming on. Oh, can't hear you. What happened? Folks, we just checked these microphones before the show.
All right.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to talking with you.
So you heard my my latest Substack there. It's very heartfelt. And I just wanted to get your initial feelings as well.
Yeah, I think what you expressed is what millions of people, millions of Christians especially, are feeling, and seeing that we want to imitate what Charlie did. We want to get into places where we can present the gospel, where we can answer questions. And so the turnout here it was kind of in my backyard, Glendale, Arizona. The turnout physically for people to go there was impressive, but now we're seeing the numbers coming in for the millions of people that watched and heard all of the talks that you just mentioned. And I think Charlie's going to be an inspiration going forward for the young and the old.
And so since that's right in Charlie's backyard, what has it increased there, or was it as big as it could get? Or have you not seen anything yet?
Well, no, I think it's been a huge increase. I mean, the reality is that we saw him killed on social media. A couple thousand students were there in person, and then it was filmed. And I remember in my case, I was actually just happened to be talking with one of my high school sons about Charlie Kirk. And then I got an alert on my phone from a post on X that JD Vance put up. We're praying for you, Charlie. And so I said, well, wait a minute. What is this about? And as I realized that the video had been posted and what it was, I didn't want to see that myself. And this was one of the far away ones. And so as I spoke to students later, I found out that there were even up close high definition ones being shared, and people who hate Christianity were laughing about this happening to Charlie Kirk. And I think the ugliness and darkness of that made Christians realize a truth which has been here the whole time. Education isn't neutral. The world hates Christ, and he told us they'll hate my followers also. And they might put on a nice appearance sometimes, but when they see something like this happen, joy comes out of their heart rather than sorrow. And I think the students all saw this. And I have to say, I was kind of worried for the students at ASU, the TPUSA students, because we planned a very big memorial on Monday at ASU. ASU let us use their basketball stadium, and we had thousands come out to hear the students do the memorial. But I was thinking that maybe once the energy of that dies down, and some of those images of Charlie being killed start to come to their minds and replay in their minds, that they might start to struggle. But we had a meeting just a couple days ago, and I asked them, do you think you need maybe any help? Because TPUSA partnered with Christian counseling services here in Phoenix to provide any counseling that people need from a Christian perspective. And all the students were energized. They were ready to go. They want to imitate Charlie and multiply his work. So all that's to say, I think this was a wake-up call to a large portion of Christians who weren't engaged, weren't active, they're just kind of going along, and they see this happen on social media. And even if they hadn't heard of Charlie before, now they know who he is, they see what he did, and they say, I want to get involved. And I think that's going to be great.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Colosseum, where virgins were raped by animals and by gladiators, and Christians were burned alive and eaten alive by wild animals, and the mob applauded and wanted more. And so I think civilization has advanced because the mob is still there. There's guys getting tattoos of Charlie getting shot. And I do think people should see it. I think, as someone who has been in violence my entire career, as a law enforcement agent, as a soldier, I think there's too much fantasy violence. I think seeing real violence is really important. But the mob is still there, but the mob is much smaller, and where the whole world, everybody had Colosseums back in the day. I've actually been to the Colosseum. Mm-hmm. Now, much of the world wept, and that is, again, the Christic way of crucibling, of changing everybody, I think.
Yeah, that's amazing. It really is. You're right. I thought the same thing about the Colosseum and how awkward and strange it is to see that happen, say a Roman excited about watching that, and then the next day you have to go to work together. And in some ways, some of us that are in the academy, there's some similarity, because I've heard the kinds of hate that professors have directed at Charlie. And now, with this very gruesome murder on social media, we have to go back to work and pretend like those things weren't said. And so I think that this is a time where Christians need to speak up and say, this is sin. This is really evil to speak that way. You see what's coming out of your heart, but there's a remedy for that in Christ. But none of your worldly philosophies are going to solve that. I mean, just taken in an objective sense, if you just looked at a piece of paper with quotes, I'm speaking to a professor here, of someone saying, I'm so glad another person was killed like that, you'd say that's not right. But when you put the name Charlie Kirk in there, does that change it? And so this is a good time again to present the gospel. The universities are completely captive to false philosophies, anti-Christian philosophies.
And I think you brought up a great point, is because the kids are coming on board because they feel it in their heart, but it's the professors. And now, so you're a professor, so you're among all these secular professors. So what's that like? Are any of them being changed?
Well, that's what I'm looking forward to seeing at our meetings, is to see minimally, does this change the kind of rhetoric? Because I've been in faculty meetings where faculty members speak up and say, we need to get TPUSA kicked off campus. And I'm sitting there as a TPUSA student advisor thinking, this is not what our meetings are for. Our meetings are supposed to be about planning our schedule and our school budget. And so I'm very curious to see if minimally that kind of language stops. And also if there's a turnaround where people could say, yeah, I realize I encouraged hatred for Charlie Kirk and I was wrong about that.
Well, so that's because the left and the government and everybody, just like Pam Bondi, I said, has talked about hate speech and said that speech is violence. I'm an expert in violence. My nose has been broken 13 times. Speech ain't violence. I can tell you what violence is.
Yeah, right. No,
this is
I grew up with sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
Exactly. But that has become the equivalent. There is, if you are saying hate speech, which they are accusing Charlie of, which is ridiculous, then it's okay to respond with physical violence because it's violence on violence. Have you addressed that with students and, or even more importantly, with the professors who are purveying this?
Yeah, I have, because so 2.5 years ago, I started a Substack. And the reason was that Charlie Kirk and Dennis Prager were going to come speak at ASU's Honors College. And the Honors College professors, 37 out of 41, so nearly every single professor, signed a letter saying that Charlie should not, and Dennis and Robert Kiyosaki was a third one, they should not be allowed to speak at the Honors College because they have hate speech and they're white nationalist bigots. And they attack students. So you just mentioned when you hear about attacking, you know what that means physically. So if you read a letter, if you're a parent and you read a letter from professors that say a guest speaker attacks students, you're thinking he like tackles them or something. But what they mean is he refutes the LGBTQ philosophy. And we as Christians know, well, yeah, the solution to that is you convert to Christ, the truth. You're more alive than ever. You're not being attacked. But they view that as losing their power over these students. And so what Charlie Kirk was and Dennis Prager were attacking then by coming to campus was they were attacking the professors' control through these false philosophies. And so I started a Substack back then. I've kept it going to keep parents in the loop about how bad it is in our universities, because what they should have done, the professors should have said, here's where I disagree with Charlie Kirk and with Christianity. And here's my argument against it. But instead, they hid and cowered in the corners. They wrote a letter. They got their dean to successfully keep him from speaking at the Honors College. Now, when I say that, they'll post, Anderson is saying this, but Charlie still spoke at ASU. Correct. He had an event at ASU. It was supposed to be at the Honors College, and you insisted that stop. And he wasn't allowed to speak at the Honors College or use the Honors College name in the event. So they successfully censored him with this claim of hate speech. And I think parents need to wake up and realize no conservative commentators are coming to campus and tackling students. But what they're doing is they're threatening the power of these professors who have been ruling through lies about the Bible, lying about the Bible, lying about God, lying about our need for Christ, and instead have replaced it with really dehumanizing philosophies.
Very true. I agree with all of that. And
can I add something real quick? When Charlie spoke at this event, what he said was, love God, honor your father and mother. He went through some of the commandments with the students. And that's the controversy that they didn't want, the professors didn't want on campus. To my memory, I don't think he even brought up LGBTQ issues in his talk. It was all advice to students about how to live a good life. And they didn't even want that much. They don't want loving God mentioned on campus.
No, they sure don't. No, because there are rules. And if you follow the rules, the Mosaic law, and then the Christic commandments, you're going to be better off. But you are accountable, and they don't want any accountability at all. They're the PhDs. I know you're a doctor, PhD. I got a couple honorary PhDs, but the new Pharisees are the PhDs.
Well, it is really sad because I agree. I'm not happy about the state of our intellectuals in the United States, and I spent my career around them. And they're humans like everyone else, and they need the love of God and Christ. But the PhD, unfortunately, can be an opportunity for a lot of vanity and pride and unwillingness to do what, as a philosopher, what I do is a kind of Socratic method. I recognize I need to know, I don't know. And so I ask questions and try to figure out what the truth of the matter is. But instead, it could be viewed as like, now that I have my PhD, I'm the authority on everything, not just my tiny little dissertation, but I'm the authority on everything.
Very cool. Yeah, Socratic method. Yeshua used the Socratic method. Paul used Socratic method. I do as well. That's certainly good. Jenny Mac 22. You don't believe Charlie's gone? Yes, he's gone. But you don't see the ones that say there is no God if that can happen. Been around a lot of funerals, military and law enforcement. Actually, where you see more people coming to Christ in faith through Charlie's assassination is actually evidence of God to me, anyway. So, but your reaction there is very common, and there's a lot of things worse than death, and it's come out that he was killed instantly doing what he loved. For those of us who knew about ballistics, that was evident as well. But I've also taken a stance that I'm going to shun anybody who tries to say for selfish publicity that it was staged. I'm here to tell you, as a firearms instructor for the DEA, we've seen a lot of shooting tapes. It wasn't staged. And if you're saying that, I'm going to shun you out of respect for Erica and the children and everybody else. I wanted to ask you also about your feelings about Charlie starting to chafe at his Israeli donors, that he was already in conflict with Bibi Netanyahu, didn't like him. He had already questioned October 7th, not like me, where I called it out as a stand down, and General Flynn backed me up. But if and I didn't want to, and I didn't put that in context of intelligence or anything, but in the context of what I'm seeing with a lot of younger Christians that I interact with as a chaplain, is they are understanding the parable of the vineyard and all the synoptic gospels, where once you kill the son, you are no longer the chosen people, and they are finding conflict when they're engaging with a lot of their parents who have been fooled by the Darby Schofield Bible heresies, which at least it's a dialogue between son and father on studying scriptural positions. But are you seeing that as well? Because that seems to be a very central. That's what a lot of us think is. He just lost a big $2 million donation. As a former criminal investigator, federal special agent, I look for motive, and the motive's right there, because I'm even more vehement and changed the stance on Israel. So I'm not really asking you about that, although you can comment if you want. What I'm asking you is about the difference in generational understanding of biblical truth.
Yeah, I think that's something I've been looking at with students, is what I call eschatology, the study of the end times. And the influence of the Schofield Bible, I've never seen in my life. I've never seen it so sharply decrease. You'll see little kind of blips up and down. Maybe it gets popular, maybe now it's not. In the 90s and early 2000s, is Kirk Cameron had these Left Behind videos, which were just kind of like the primo dispensationalism in movie form. Now he's come out of it. He's no longer holding to that.
Really? I didn't know.
So I've kind of wondered, are you going to remake movies, like make movies to counter that point then? Because those movies are still out there, and all that influence is still out there. But I think that's really a good example where he's in Generation X. He's left primo dispensationalism, Darby Schofield approach, and now millennials, but especially Generation Z, I'm seeing it. And sometimes it might not be sophisticated in the sense that they haven't read the Schofield Bible. They don't know about some of the details of that eschatology, but they simply know that we have the Great Commission. And we're told to go into all the world, discipling all the nations. And so the attitude that I grew up seeing among many Christian circles, which was that, well, we're right on the cusp of the end of history. And so all you need to do is just kind of get ready for that. And decreased missions, decreased discipleship. Now we're seeing the reverse, which I think is very exciting and very biblical. Christians saying, no, I want to go, whether it's to university campuses or to be in discipleship programs at church or to even be a missionary. We're seeing that take fire again, which I think is a great outcome.
Interesting. And again, going back to the professors, that's where your biggest. So when I became a whistleblower with the government, when I was doing a big extradition package, it ended up that my own agency and the government were the biggest stumbling block. So I'm sure I would assume the same thing for you. It's not really the students that are the big problem. It's the professors and the hierarchy there.
Yeah, I kind of joke around that for the first time in my life, I missed the 70s professor who was kind of a hippie guy. But
no more war and
no more war. He's against big government. He's against he hates corporations because they censor speech.
Yeah.
Now the professors, many of them I work with, they think they're like that guy, but they let big government and big business censor speech. They have speech codes they enforce. They're the opposite of the 70s radical professor. So I kind of miss that guy for that reason. And I found, and even though I'm a conservative, I kind of laugh that I'm doing things that 70s professor might be proud of by speaking up against these power structures. But I think that the whole philosophy they base their life on is a philosophy from Nietzsche and Foucault about power. And so they analyze everything in power dynamics. And so the Christian has had power dynamics. He's had power on his side, and now we need to reverse that. And so I think we can kind of invert that against them and use the logic of their own position against them by saying, well, currently you're in the position of power in the universities. You're silencing the majority of your students. You're oppressing them with this ideology. And so they're rising up and they're casting off the chains of your tyranny. And they want to be able to at least go back to doing Socratic method, if not actually proclaiming Christ as well.
Well, part of Nietzsche, though, is the Superman. And of course, to have the Superman, then you have the inferior subhumans, there. And that I think goes, I was up in Iowa doing a speech on trafficking and transhumanism. And that ties right into fake science, which is where you get grants and everything and get published as well. So there's a lot of, again, I'm always looking for motive.
Yeah.
And there's the obvious motive for the fake Darwinian science at this point. And, the fake directed evolution stuff that has no basis in any science.
Well, and I just got an email today from ASU, what's something called the Humanities Institute at ASU, asking the audience that it sent it to about, do you want to look into funding opportunities? So these are small internal grants. These aren't big government grants. But the first thing on the list is attend queer and trans research events with Queer X Humanities at ASU. So that's what they have featured as their main topic of research. And so I think that this is one of the reasons why I write over on Substack is parents need to know how bad it is. And you and I had said earlier that in general, parents know that we don't send our kids to university to become virtuous. But isn't that enough to say that's horrible? That we're supporting this with tax money, we're paying tuition, and we know that they're not going to be taught to be wise or virtuous, let alone they're going to be taught that everything in the Bible is false. And they're going to have this, in this case, this Queer X Humanities put in its place. So I think it's time for parents to realize you're setting your kids down to the Philistines, metaphorically, to be educated. And in that way, it connects up with the kind of imagery I was using from Samson. The Philistines bind him, but his people hand him over to the Philistines because they say, stop causing problems. You're rocking the boat with the Philistines. We just want to cower in the corner, and hopefully the Philistines will leave us alone. And that's not God's plan, and Samson knows that. And so in the power of the Spirit, he rips those cords apart. But I think metaphorically, we're in a similar place as Christians. We've allowed the Philistines of our day to bind us up so that we're not allowed to debate. We're not allowed to talk. If we start to speak, we're called, that's hate speech, that's racism. We have those insults thrown at us, and so we get scared and cower. And I think the times are changing now. We need to be able to, as Christians, confront these falsehoods that have taken control of our universities and say, I demand to have a university education for my children, but not this one. And we're not paying for this anymore. And so when they speak up and they say, well, so you're trying to censor us and you're trying to take away our freedom of speech. No, you can start a university yourself. You can go on YouTube or Substack and talk about your philosophies. The First Amendment does not give you a right to a state paid for job.
Yeah, we have in our chaplaincy a wonderful couple who raised a godly daughter, but they did not inoculate her to evil, and she went off to college. And you're rooming with, evil infested people, and she ended up taking her own life. And so, we're still praying and coming alongside with them, but parents really don't realize, you really don't know how bad it is. So I'm glad you're telling them how bad it is there. And my message is, you can't just raise your kids, and I'm doing this right now. You can't just raise your kids up in Christ and in godliness. You got to inoculate them to the evil of the world they're going to have to go out there and face. And I think that's another great thing that, Charlie and TPUSA were doing so well, because he was confronting it head on.
Yeah, I think I use that exact imagery. You got to inoculate your children. They need to know beforehand in middle school, but especially high school, they need to know what they're going to face if they go the state education route. And I know many parents would say, I'm not going to send them to state education. I don't blame you. But for some of our parents, that that's what they can afford. They want to help their children do better in life. And so I think it's very sad that we have these universities, but we can't make use of them because they've been completely taken captive ideologically. So we can have a debate about, should there even be state universities? That's a fine debate to have. But we do have them. We do pay taxes for them. And yet they assail and attack Christianity. So your point is 100% right to say, let your kids know what's going on. And maybe that's one of the reasons Charlie Kirk's videos, which are still all over social media, will be helpful, is because Christians can see what is on the mind of university students. And that's what Charlie did really well. He didn't come there and kind of impose what's interesting to Charlie Kirk on them. You come to the mic, you ask me, what's interesting to you? And then I'll figure out what's the relationship of that to Christianity. And so that's one good way, I think, one good resource that parents will have now, because when I've shown some of those videos to my kids before they knew, kind of got them interested in this, they thought it's almost like a comedy routine. Sometimes they thought, this can't be real. Do people really believe this stuff?
No, that's exactly. I had my kids watching it, my 11-year-old, my teenage, and they're like, no, Dad, they can't be that dumb. I'm like, no, they are.
I had one the other day. I saw one where the student told Charlie Kirk asked if you're responsible for taking illicit drugs. And the student said, no, because you don't have free will. Your choices are shaped by your society. And that's what they've been told. There's no personal responsibility. Your choices aren't free. But the thing I point out is, think of how dehumanizing that is. Exactly. You're being told by professors you don't have free will, that you don't have your own choices to make in life. It's someone else's fault. I mean, even if you're at the lowest, most oppressed status in this system, wouldn't part of what you still retain is that you're a human and you make your own choices, and they can never change that about you? But that's not what they've taught. And these students have absorbed it and said, my choices aren't my own. It's because of white nationalism or Christianity or the patriarchy. And what Charlie did was just redirected it to point out how absurd that is. And what Christianity offers us, and I think you said this a little earlier, it offers us the truth, which is that all humans do have dignity. We're all made in the image of God. We have our own minds. We can think, we can make choices, and there's consequences for our choices.
Well, yes, very well said. So it's a good debate of whether we should even have state universities. But there's also something I've been saying a long time, is the university system is failing and fading. Now, I have 2 bachelors, a master's, so I got plenty of time in college. But my daughter the other day said, why do you want me to go to college? I'm not sure I do want you to go to college. You don't necessarily have to. If you want to go, I've got my GI Bill and, 529 and prepared, but maybe not. I think that the college system, the liberal arts system, is failing. I think you're going to start to see the rise, and already are seeing the rise of trade schools. And specialty areas.
I don't know if you saw, but Harvard's already trying to get on that and start a trade school program. I don't know if they're running it, but they're affiliated with it to help students go in that direction. So the universities are huge businesses. I mean, millions and millions of dollars. And so they're not going to go quietly. If trade school is interesting, then they'll start trade schools within their business model. And I'm seeing some of that shift even at my university, because I don't think people realize this. Arizona's not often thought about, although in the last couple presidential elections we've factored prominently. But ASU is the largest state university in the country. We have 195,000 students between online and in person.
Wow.
And that's global reach, students across the world taking classes at ASU. And so the influence there obviously is massive. They're not going to just say, oh, I guess we taught a false philosophy, I guess we should close our doors. They're going to pivot to something else. But the thing you bring about trade school is really important. And also, I think it's important to describe different kinds of degrees, because when Charlie Kirk said things about university degrees aren't worthwhile, he wasn't saying every single one. If you want to be a medical doctor or you want to be an engineer that builds bridges, you got to go to university. He was talking about gender studies degrees.
Right.
And I think by exposing the falsehood behind things like gender studies, women's studies, any of these studies degrees, which are based on identity politics and based on creating hatred among people, helping them to envy each other and blame other people for their excuses. Once we get rid of those kinds of degrees, that will have cleaned the place up a lot.
And so do you think that is going to happen, or a lot of these institutions will continue to shrink, and there'll be some that are more authentic than others?
Yeah, well, probably a little bit of both. I think the general approach I've witnessed is they always want to save face with the public. So they'll never say something like, we made a mistake. We're sorry. Here's what we're going to do. Even though that would solve the issue.
They're not going to confess and repent.
Yeah. In my own court case, the required DEI training, we've been going in the courts now for 1.5 years. We won the first round and then they appealed it. And so we're waiting for the appeals judge right now. And in the meantime, and by the way, ASU hired Perkins Coie to defend them on the case against me.
I've been to, I lived in Tucson. I'm a U of A grad. I've actually been to that Perkins Coie office for my intelligence consultation, where they had the SCIF, the Special Compartmented Information Facility, in there.
Yeah, that's a big deal to hire them instead of using in-house lawyers. And the lawyers representing me are from the Goldwater Institute, which is a legal think tank that represents against big government overreach.
I know them. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So in the meantime, what's happened? So the last 18 months, ASU has taken down the training. So they're currently defending a training in court that they don't offer, because what my advice was in the very beginning, what they should have just said was, you know what, Professor Anderson, you pointed out some really good things. We actually hired an external company to make that training, and we're not happy with what they did. So we're going to stop using that training. We'll make our own internal training. It would have been all done, and they would have saved face and looked great. But it would have included that they have a tiny bit of admitting they made a mistake, and they can't do it. And
so you're winning.
Well, I think either way, yeah. In that sense, the case is over. If we lose somehow at the appellate court, we'll just appeal it to the state Supreme Court, which is where I prefer it ends up anyway, because it'll have stronger outcome. But in the meantime, we won. That training's down. And what I want to do at the end, when it's all said and done, I want to use a Freedom of Information Act request and find out how much did ASU pay Perkins Coie to defend this case. When we see that dollar amount, and we know, and then students see that they're getting fees tacked on to everything, but the ASU is spending this amount of money on a worthless court case that they lost, students will start to see that kind of fiscal mismanagement also. That's another thing that gets to them, because they get really frustrated with tuition going up every semester, fees being added on. And so I think that's another piece I'm looking forward to finding out. What was it? Tens of thousands of dollars on defending this case.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great idea too. That's really good. So your book, it sounds like, I have a book, Initiation: Boys Are Born, Men Are Trained. It's about my Apache heritage, because the tribes really trained their people.
Yeah.
I was up on San Carlos and White Mountain there. Since you're in Arizona, I'm sure you know the res.
Yeah.
But it sounds like your biblical perspective is a call to return to manhood. As well. I think you're targeting, was that a call, a targeting of young men?
Yeah. My book on Samson, it had a few things that I was doing in it. One of them is that evangelicals, using that word broadly, when they've preached on Samson for the last 50 years, what you'll normally hear is that he is a failed man that God used anyway. And then they'll tell that to the audience. basically saying you're all failed men, but don't worry, God can use you anyway. And when I got into this story and I started reading commentaries, I realized how Samson is very Christological. He's pointing us to Christ, and he's living out some of the things that point us to Christ, like being betrayed 3 times for silver coins. And so when people read the Samson and Delilah story, they think to themselves, why was Samson so stupid? Doesn't he realize after the first time what's going on? But now fast forward, and Jesus was with Judas for 3 years, and he knew the whole time. He didn't mistreat Judas. He didn't treat him differently. And he knew he was going to be betrayed. And so instead of looking at, didn't Samson know or didn't Jesus know, what you're seeing is the long-suffering love of the Messiah for his bride. And those images are very important to remember in Samson. And so I thought to myself, I'm looking at young men online and they want to be masculine, but I see a lot of bad influences where they start to go, for someone like Andrew Tate, and they say, well, at least he's masculine, even though he's not Christian. I think he became a Muslim for a while. And I said, well, we need to retrieve that because they're noticing something problematic, the influence of feminism, and that men no longer do their duty of defending their families, defending their nation, defending their church. Instead, they kind of, I've used the word coward in the corner, just hoping the Philistines don't notice that they're there. Instead of, well, why don't we have the Samson attitude? What's great about Samson is he went to the Philistines. He didn't just wait for them to come to him. And so I wrote this before Charlie Kirk's, but you almost see that, right, with Charlie Kirk going to the universities.
Yeah.
Defeating the false ideologies the professors teach and freeing the students. So that was the purpose of my book, was to inspire, especially young men. I mean, if a young woman wants to get involved in that as well, there's no reason not to. But the inspiration for young men to say, the biblical hero who ultimately is our Lord, he's the one we should be imitating. And he went out and he directly confronted the Pharisees in their home, so to speak, where they had authority. And we should be doing the same thing.
Well, but you're just like you said, that's not the message that it comes out from conventional church. Church men tend to be wimpy, or at least that's the old.
No, that is, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of change to that now. There's a lot of coaches. I can't think of the coach that just coached for Christ in football and everything.
No, you're right. There's a change in that, but you're right. In the old days, whenever you see a movie, like an English movie from Jane Austen times, the parson is always the weakest guy in the whole movie.
Yeah. In reality, you look at the strongest guy. I think that's the great thing about watching The Passion is the first thing for warriors like me is, wow, Yeshua was hard. You had to be hard to survive all of that.
Yeah. And have, virtues like courage and diligence and strength, fortitude, getting those to be the ones back. I think that we've been living under an era where the main virtue is kindness or being winsome. And so the worst thing that can happen to you is that your colleagues don't like you. And you say, oh no, what did I do wrong? I guess I wasn't nice enough to them. Now, I'm not saying that we'd be mean, because courage is not bravado. There's 2 errors on each side. There's courage, and then there's weakness, and there's bravado. So you want real courage.
Yeah. And saying be kind or be nice is not the same thing as love your neighbor.
Yeah,
it's
right.
Not
exactly.
equivalent at all. Mm-hmm. And people don't get that.
Yeah, love sometimes requires love can be long-suffering and patient, but it also requires the truth, and we shouldn't be afraid of that. And if the truth is that tens of thousands and millions of American university students are sitting through classes where this anti-Christian philosophy is being put on them, and they have to lie to their professors by taking tests where they say this stuff is true, even if they don't believe it's true, we need to free those students from that situation by confronting those lies. That's loving them. That's the point I made about Charlie, was that he wasn't mean. It's just the opposite. He loved America's university students, and he loved them enough to listen to them, because sometimes when we hear what they're interested in, we kind of dismiss it like, I'm not interested in that. That's really dumb. But what they want to debate about, listen to them, be interested in what they're concerned about, and then present them in a relevant way with the truth of God. That's love.
Yes. And, I teach that in my martial arts class with kids, like discipline. Discipline means protection. Discipline means you care.
Like Jocko, right? Discipline is freedom.
Yeah, that's right. Discipline leads to freedom. Yeah, Nazadal says, I talk to my teen weekly about brainwashing in schools and warning them from getting any shots. Well, good for you. We need more of that. Well, Owen, thank you so much for coming on, and continue those great work with the students, and especially behind the lines, behind enemy lines, with all those
That's what I feel like.
Are any of them coming up to you like and going, "Hey, good job"?
Yeah, it's been really inspiring. I've had both faculty and students send me emails like that, where for whatever reason they might feel they can't speak up, but they say, "Keep it up, please. Thank you so much." So I have that support, which is really nice. And but you're right. I've used that same example, that I'm behind enemy lines, or as you know, ASU's mascot is literally the Sun Devil, right? So I'm like, I'm in the devil's country, I'm in the devil's university, but the light of God can shine there too.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, Owen, and my prayers and blessings to everybody at ASU, even though I'm a U of A grad. So
Yeah.
God bless.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so I don't know what happened to my other guest, Ira CHALEFF. He doesn't seem to have come on. He had a book, Courageous Followership, and I wanted to address that because a lot of people have this unswerving devotion to Trump, whether he's right or wrong now. And those of us who are devoted to Christ don't see him as the Messiah and see him as fallible. And so Ira was going to talk about courageous followership. And how to stop a tyrant, the power of political followers to make or break a toxic leader. It's up on my Patreon. I guess he's not going to make it, unfortunately. But there is leadership and there is followership. That is, you got to know how to lead, you got to know how to follow. I've been a team leader, I've been a team member. This is something I really stress on Team America all the time, and we have to have that ability. And my staff has watched me weed out a lot of people who could not lead. They just wanted to be lone wolves, and also folks who could not follow as well. And so, of course, as Americans, we are some degree followers, and there's this elite class, and holding them accountable is ethical followership, making accountable leadership and understanding that. But that requires all of us to be involved in the process, which Charlie very much was, and what he was encouraging students to do. And usually, of course, college students, of course, are checked out. They don't know what's going on. There's all the videos of them saying, where's this country, or who's the president of this, or who's the vice president, and they're totally checked out. They don't know anything. So that was what Ira was going to talk about. I guess he hasn't made it. He has talked to a lot of institutions, a lot of big names, but for whatever reason, his other books are Intelligence, Disobedience for Children. There's The Courageous Follower, Self-Assessment, The Art of Followership, Setting the Course, a Congress management guide. He's talked to a lot of big institutions. I did want to talk to him about some of his rather conventional points of view, but that's okay. But I did want to highlight, as Candace Owens has, as Tucker Carlson has, that Charlie had questioned October 7th. He did not like Bibi Netanyahu. He was chafing and very much disappointed that he was being criticized for daring to criticize Israel and put America first. And that he was being called anti-Semitic, which is a stupid term. It's a false term, and it's just something they use because actually most Ashkenazi Jews from Europe are not Semitic. Anybody from the region, including Palestinians, are Semitic. So it's a false term that they use to target them. But that's the motive. So when I'm talking, when I am assessing, projecting on who killed Charlie and why, the obvious folks with the motive are Israel and Mossad, because he was so influential and he was about to change his point of view. What's the motive of the tranny setup with the fake rifle, with the fake bullet, with all that? No one knows. That is just a dangle, as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't really make sense. But according to a friend of Charlie's, Charlie had even warned Trump last June against bombing Iran. And Charlie was the only person who even did that. And Trump barked at him and angrily shut him down. And then Charlie had become a target of a sustained private campaign of intimidation and free-floating fury by wealthy and powerful allies of Netanyahu. So that rift was there. The motive is there. And if there's another motive someplace else, I'm open to hearing it, but I don't see it. We see that it's very clear that Trump is captured by Israel. In fact, again, of the speakers, I was so impressed with Erica, what she did. Tucker is always great. RFK was almost breaking down because he's already had family members assassinated. He knows that personally. But Erica is now going to be unstoppable. She's just getting started. And because of her children, she is going to become an unstoppable force. And she is going to be able to empathize at a level with people and reach people at a level that no one else could. I was just telling the family the other day that lost their daughter that they are going to be able to speak to people from such a deeper place than I can, because I haven't had that kind of loss. That's what the whole passion is about. That's why Yeshua has to come down and go through all of the pain so that he could empathize with our pain, because whatever we've been through, he's been through more. So that is very significant, very important to understand. And I hope that makes sense as well. There's even a video, it's been taken down now, of Charlie Kirk saying that Netanyahu let October 7th happen so he could stay in power. And that's now been removed from YouTube. And of course, I've talked about how I've been set up by various Jewish commentators. The last one I read on a couple shows back, and I haven't he hasn't responded as well. But that's what I really wanted to talk about today, how Charlie changed me and was so important to me. And I wasn't really paying attention, but I'm going to pay attention now. I now stand with the unashamed. My die is cast, the line crossed. I won't look back. Let up, slow down, back away, or be still. My past is redeemed. My present makes sense. My future is secure. I'm done with small planning, smooth knees, colorless dreams, tamed visions, mundane talking, cheap living, and dwarfed goals. I don't need preeminence, prosperity, position, promotions, plaudits, or popularity. I live by faith, lean on his presence, walk by patience, lift by prayer, and labor by power of the great Holy Spirit. My face is set, my gait is fast, my goal is heaven. My road is narrow, my way rough, my companions few, my guide reliable, my mission clear. I cannot be bought, compromised, detoured, lured away, turned back, deluded, or delayed. I will not flinch in the face of sacrifice, hesitate in the presence of the adversary, negotiate at the table of the enemy, ponder at the pool of popularity, or meander in the maze of mediocrity. I won't give up, shut up, let up, until I have stayed up, stored up, prayed up, paid up, preached up for the cause of Christ. I'm a disciple of Yeshua. I go till he comes. I give till I drop. preach till all I know, and work till he stops me. And when he comes for his own, and he will have no problem recognizing me, because my banner will be clear. God bless. Remember, freedom is never given. It's found in Christ through discipline, through prayer, through redemption, through reconciliation. Freedom is taken.